Welcome to Fashion Neurosis, Trinny Woodall.
Hmm.
Can I ask you, why did you choose what you're wearing today?
It's not totally me what I'm wearing today because this is very classic and I hate too classic. I had a few things to do today where I was doing something on camera earlier. Then I was in a meeting where I needed to be very present, so colour is really important. I knew I was coming to you. I did think about the flow of something to be comfortable and not constrained as you talk, and lying flat, what would also be a nice shot of colour. I didn't know the colour of your setting, and in some filming I would think about it too. So lots of thoughts went through my head.
What were the first items of clothing you focused on and longed for as a child?
The memories are very strong. I have no memories of childhood apart from memories of my clothes. It's quite mad, but it's true. A few things bring to mind. There was a time I was obsessed with this coat, and I was about 6. And there is actually a picture of us in this place in Switzerland called Kitzbühel, but it had this sort of little, it was A-line, this would have been late 60s, with sort of sheepskin little collar and in tiers sheepskin as well. And it was either, I think it was red and the white. And I was obsessed with it. I loved it. I don't remember buying it or anything. I mean, I don't remember being with my mother in the shop, but I remember wearing it. And my mother dressed all 3 of us identically. I think tragically for my brother until he was about 7.
God.
Of just these, they're just not like everyday use, but there's many pictures of us where we're in the same sort of print for bikinis and boxer shorts. He wasn't in a bikini, but there was one where we all wore the same coat, and it was this very classic tweed blue coat with a little more sort of teal velvet collar and patent shoes. So we all actually had the patent shoes. His were just slightly different shape and little white socks.
And was he wearing a little tiered white and red
No,
sheepskin?
he wasn't in that. That was, I think what I loved about that, it was that I got to wear it without it being what we all wore.
Oh.
Yeah.
But did your mother buy you lots of things? Because we had very, very little. And I remember for some amazing reason, we had a thing each from me and my sister. We had something from Kids in Gear, which was this really trendy shop in the 60s for children.
Mm-hmm.
And I had these orangey red bell-bottom trousers that was so tight that they acted as a sort of guard.
You remember things when there's fewer, don't
yeah,
you?
yeah, you really do.
I would say we went through phases, because we went through phases where there was sort of a slightly opulent lifestyle, and we went through phases where there wasn't. So there are occasions when there's this special item of clothing, but I never remember opening up to a big wardrobe, ever. But I do remember these special things.
When did you start to feel clothes could be a tool in your life? Do you remember the first time you found a piece of clothing that made you feel different?
Yes. I went to boarding school very early, from 6.5. And when I was 10, I then went for a year to an American school where they didn't have school uniform. So the whole dynamic changed, because when you grow up with school uniform, you don't think about clothing so much. Well, I didn't. And it was quite strict. There was a Sunday where you could wear a jumper of your choice, but otherwise it was really much a school uniform location. So this American school threw me. And I remember one outfit that I got, and I felt special and different in it. And then I ruined it. And it was this paisley printed top in sort of turquoises with a round collar made of sort of cotton, long sleeved. And then it was these magical turquoise, very wide leg bottom, like your orange ones, Bella, corduroy trousers. And I wanted to wear them so desperately, and it was a rainy day, and I knew we were going for a walk in the woods as a school trip. My mother said, don't wear it because you'll ruin it. And I had to wear it. I just had to wear it because I was very, very unhappy in this school. I felt I had no friends, and I just thought, if I wear something really fabulous, life will be okay. And so this outfit had to deliver so much for me. And I remember going to school and wearing it. I don't remember at all what people thought about it because it was too many years ago. But I remember we went in the woods and we were in mud. And I remember I came home and they were sort of, there was this much of a mud stain and we could never fully get it out. And I was so upset because these were things that it was just the most incredible combination of outfit. And I remember even I wore it with this little chain belt. Whenever I brought them out again, they were slightly spoiled.
It's so interesting. I mean, what you say about uniform is I believe in that because our uniform was abolished and I longed for this conformity. And how you describe clothes and how they were almost mood altering because they were about somehow some sort of conformity that made you also visible in a safe way. And it's so ironic that they didn't necessarily even notice what you were wearing, but you had this magic thing and it delivers emotionally.
It's always about the emotional feeling.
Yeah.
It's never really about the physical interpretation.
No.
It's about protection, or it's about hiding, or it's about being visible. You know.
I think I just reinvented not having a school uniform in my fashion brand. My suits are just permutations of
a school
uniform.
uniform.
And because we didn't have a tie, which was what I particularly long for, I just made my own one now and I wear it all the time.
I do see your suits in my wardrobe as my uniform. Like I've got to do this BBC thing where I talk about being a CEO as a businesswoman. I'm 3 days of filming, but I have to wear the same thing. And I'm going to wear your blue suit, I thought already, because I just want a good colour. It needs to be businesslike, but I need to feel if it's a long day and I'm tired, it won't show through, and the colour will take me through the day.
Oh, you look so pretty in that pale blue.
I love that blue suit.
In fact, where do you start with an outfit?
Depends what mood I'm in. I think if I wake up and I look in the mirror and I think I feel exhausted, I'll start with my makeup. No, I'll start with my skin. And then I'll do my makeup, and then I'll think, okay, now I'm ready. And I've got a room, sort of the size of this room, which is my study and my wardrobe. So I'll then, as I'm doing my makeup, I'll sort of cast my eye around the room and think, what am I being inspired to wear? And I'll do it that way. But if I wake up feeling great, I'll go upstairs, because my bedroom's downstairs. I'll go upstairs into this room and I'll think, okay, what do I want to bring on today? I'll look at my diary, I'll look at the weather. No, I'll look at the weather first. Very first thing I do, weather. Rain, not rain. And then there's this thing, there's certain things. So if it's below 9 degrees, no, below 10 degrees, it's a coat. If it's below 15 degrees or 17 degrees, it's a jacket. And then it would be a top. So weather is very important. And colour, what colour I feel. I'm quite drawn by colour. And what I'm doing in my day. So I might, if I'm doing very sort of business day, meeting after meeting, it will probably be some form of a uniform, some form of a suit. It will be some form of shoulder. Shoulder is everything to me.
I love that. We had such an interesting conversation in my shop about shoulder, and you've got this special T-shirt that you wear with shoulder pads. And I'm obsessed with this triangle of shoulder.
Yeah.
And the kind of how you convey strength, really, where you go out a couple of millimeters even, you're a slightly more a dangerous option.
I was dressing something yesterday. I had to do some magazine shoot, and there was a dress I was going to put on, and I thought, do I put shoulder pads in it? Because it's nearly an automatic reaction to me. And then I thought, no, this is a image that needs to show vulnerability, and shoulders show strength. And there's moments when, it's like if you're going on a date, how soft is the texture of that fabric and how structured you want to be? And I'm much more comfortable in structure. I find it safer to be in structure. So to be sexy and soft is far more of a challenge to me than to be structured and safe. And I just...
So what's your kind of default? I know you don't really have them, but you seem so sort of, you're so analytical about how you wear things, but in a way to go on a date is where you have to discard all your foils and your
Or do you? This is the thing. I have a friend of mine who is beautiful, unbelievably clever. She's like the cleverest woman I know. And she is a scientist, but she has a big company. So we were talking about the concept of dating, and she said, Trinny, men don't like sequins, platform boots, big prints they can't understand, and textures that aren't soft. And she's very like this. She'll literally do this. And I'm like, I get that, but that's what I am. So how much do you change what you are to fit in for a first date? And there's a balance between feeling okay to feel a little sexy. There's so many rules around dating. So there's this thing of don't try too hard on a first date, because then you can lean into how you want to feel in terms of what you want to reveal. So I've been challenging myself to do some things differently recently. So I went out last Friday and somebody had set me up, and it was 4 of us. And I had done this little Closet Confessions, which is this filming I do with Chloe, who's curvy shaped, different from me. And we did dressing for a date. And I shared with her the challenge of, I don't know how to dress for a date. I'm recently single and I haven't done it for years. And it was how, it's about undoing that top button. I hate to undo the top button.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, we don't like to undo. The top button means everything. It means structure, it means sharpness, it means so much. So to undo the top button and then to wear a fitted dress, really no. But I did then on Friday think, I texted this woman, I said, what are you wearing? She said, I'm wearing a red fitted dress. So I thought, okay. So I put on this leopard fitted dress.
Wow.
With leopard shoes, a leopard bag, and a leopard jacket. I thought, fuck it. I just thought, this is me. I love to lean in. If I lean into a print, it's leopard. So I did. And the dress was a £39 dress from Zara. The jacket was a Stella McCartney 5 seasons ago or 5 years ago, where I have a gilet from it, and I love the type of size of print. The shoes were a liar and sexy as fuck. And the bag was I don't know what. So I walk into this restaurant and I had felt already, that moment where sometimes getting ready is the best part of it. And when I got ready and I left, I thought, I'm feeling good. When you have that moment, this is good, this is working. And I sat down and I didn't know this person who I was being set up with. So I focused my attentions on talking to the other 2 people a bit, but sort of politely including them in the conversation. But I noticed they couldn't stop looking. And I thought this was a good one. I don't know if I like them or not, but I just thought that was a good one. That was actually a good decision, because I showed a feminine side, but I had a jacket. A leopard print is something that my friend might say men can't understand print so well, but leopard print doesn't sit there. It sits somewhere else. So it was
Also, men, you just never know, and I think the more you kind of reduce anyone, then the less chance you have of having some sort of connection. But
yes, but then in a way, it's that balance, Bella, isn't it? Between this is me, hi. So let's cut out the chaff at the get-go. And if they can't deal with this element, which I'm going to bring in at some stage of the conversation, or have it at the beginning, then they're not for me.
Yeah. I think I don't undo the top button, but I like to wear something that I could imagine someone touching and would feel great, like the silk shirt.
Exactly. So you have that sensorial.
Yeah.
Tight but sensorial. I mean, fitted but...
It's just sort of hiding, but if
sexy.
Things go well, it will feel nice.
Yeah, that's very good.
That's my secret strategy.
That is and even, you see, to me, when I look at you now, if you didn't have the pearl across the tie, it would be severe. But the pearl across the tie breaks up the severity of it and makes it feel there's something I want to undress.
Aha.
Yeah.
I'll go on a date with you then.
All right, darling. It is these little
It is those things. It's
off-centered
just
details.
sometimes it's just luminosity that you get into someone's head, or even if you don't, you sort of think, oh, maybe I'm vaguely, some of that light has caught, and it's something to think about, even if nothing goes anywhere.
So how many silk shirts are you making?
Well, as many as possible, because it took...
Did you make this one?
Yeah, this is
Why
my
did
one.
I not see this one? Because the colour is everything on this one.
Yeah.
Is this a new one or an old one?
It's an old one, but it's a repeated, it's like part of the Icons collection, so it's always there. But because people were slow to buy shirts, because a lot of women won't wear a shirt because they, for all the reasons that we like, the top collar done up, this container.
Yeah.
But I feel that a suit can look best with with the right shirt, not a cotton, but this kind of this silky, slinky thing. So it's not masculine, it's just suggestive.
Yeah.
And I think boyish is very feminine, whereas masculine is just man. I don't want to look like a man at all.
Yeah.
But I look more feminine as a boy, and I love to create that for other
So
people.
true. Boyish as opposed to mannish.
Manish is like, no way.
Yeah.
It's
Whereas I
for
can
myself.
sometimes do more mannish than boyish when I'm just wanting to, probably a part of me saying, please don't mess with me because I'm going to fuck with you. You know, there's an element of, yeah, like going to investor meetings, I would definitely say I dress mannish, not boyish.
Because I do the opposite.
Yeah.
When I go to investor meetings, I think one of my strengths is to be sort of not testosterone, not head to head.
Yeah.
They can do that.
Yeah.
And if I can be a little more gentle but with good ideas, I feel I'll get listened to or noticed. My ideas will get heard. And now I believe that. It seems, anyway, they're all very polite and
Can I
courteous.
analyse you now?
Yeah.
Because I'd say from that one still needs the wily way of a femininity of a woman to deal in a man's world.
I completely agree.
Okay. Whereas I want to find the man who doesn't believe that still, and the other ones I will discard. So when they want to put me in this role of seeing me as a woman as opposed to a person, I feel my most confrontative because I'm a person coming to you for investment. I'm not a woman coming to you for investment. So I probably maybe would have had more success because I went to, I wrote to 250 people, I went to 50 investors and I got one investment. But I got the right investor. And I got somebody who knew what I was. And the thing is, you are what you dress like in that regard. So they're going to get what you are, and I will get what I am.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And in a way, the person who invested in me, he's quite aesthetic. He likes product, he likes a look.
Yeah.
And I
He
felt
speaks
like
your language.
he gets me.
Yeah.
Even if we're so different. And so that was a kind of communal language. And it's I feel like when I go into those rooms full of men, that they possibly think I don't really understand her, but she's on to something.
Yeah.
I hope they do anyway. But that's what I hope, because I can't do their thing, but I know I can do mine. So I try to do the best version of my communication, which is about illuminating ideas and showing that I'm willing to make compromises.
Whereas I don't want to compromise.
Well, nor do I, but I don't think anyone does. But I want to get ahead. I want to move forward.
And to make it happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes one has to.
Do you have any obsessions at the moment?
With what kind of things?
Well, I mean, you seem like someone who potentially you have loads and you're so noticing. But is there anything uppermost at the moment? Have you got like a particular pet? I mean, one of my obsessions at the moment is actually your tinted moisturizer, the BFF, because it's so effective. I put it on and it's like retouch. I mean, as much as good as I can get at this point, but it's just fantastic.
I've got obsessions on, what have I got obsessions on? I can be obsessed with clothes. I can be obsessed with the concept of something I want to have in my wardrobe that I feel is missing. And then I can think, okay, let me go on a quest of what that is. I can be very obsessed in my Wednesday MPD meetings of what I'm developing next and be really obsessed about, because for me, skincare is always about doing something truly innovative. Like makeup isn't, because everyone's done nearly everything in makeup. So you might bring out something where it's just a different texture slightly, but you're still not reinventing a lipstick, you know. So maybe it's that it's just a beautiful color and the texture is actually just using some more ingredients, and then you've got a beautiful thing it comes in. If I were to ever do a lipstick, you know, which I don't do right now. But skincare, it starts with an idea, and then I become obsessed to find the solution for that idea. So usually I either find an incredible ingredient and I think, what is that going to really work in? So I found this, I was researching stress a few years ago and the effect of stress on our skin. And I became obsessed with looking at what ingredients can destroy cortisol, because cortisol is what shows on your face because you release it, and its effect on your face can be dehydration and you can look wizened and tired, lots of things. So I then found this plant, and then I found someone in Switzerland who'd made the plant into a compound, which then became an ingredient. So then I got the clinical trials from the lab, and then I thought, okay, it does a 20% reduction in cortisol at 2%. So then I brought it to our lab, and I then started testing, if I do more, will I get better results? So I then put in 10%, it's quite an expensive ingredient, 10% of this thing, neoproline, and started testing it. It was during COVID. And it was very challenging to test because there weren't people. They usually test on like 50 people. So we had to send it all to them, and it took them forever. So I was testing on myself. And I was obsessed. I was obsessed that I should get a result, because I thought this is innovation, because this is like, you think it's a product to just make some coverage, but it's going to do so much more. And I'd started with just it being a serum. And then when I got these results, I then thought, actually, I'll put pigment in. And it was a very obsessive project.
And is that what
And this is something called BFF
is?
de-stress, which is another one. But it does reduce stress. You put it on after about an hour, the neoproline starts to work on cortisol that you're producing. And you literally look in the mirror 2 hours later, let's say you woke up and you were stressed and you hadn't slept well and you just were releasing too much cortisol. You put it on, and then, because how I knew, the day I knew it was working, all right, I woke up, it was during COVID time, but there was somebody who could come to the door, because I remember this woman came to the door to do something, and she was always this effusive person. She's Colombian, always complimentary. And I always find it irritating. And so I'd woken up knowing I looked like shit. I put the stuff on, I was still testing it. And then about 2 hours later, she arrived at the door and she went, "Trinny, you look so amazing. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Please, I know I look shit. Don't just," she said, no. So I went to look in the mirror, and it was like, I wasn't that person I looked at the morning. I thought, fuck, it works. Fuck, it works. It was so like, and that's obsession to me. So I'm most obsessed in my work. That's my top obsession. My secondary obsession would be something that I'm craving, like food, an ingredient to eat, or clothing. And then obsessions that come and they go very quickly. You know, like somebody you meet and then they text you and then you're obsessing about it, and then you actually take a step back and think, do I actually like them or not? No, actually. And then the obsession's gone.
Yeah.
In a flash, in 2 days, in an hour. Yeah.
It is. It's so.
What is your biggest obsession?
Well, I think my biggest obsession is how to feel good.
Really? In what way?
Well, in any way I can that makes me feel grounded, centered, and energetic. And at the moment, I'm really stressed, and I feel very like, I need some of that de-stress BFF, too much cortisol. So
What's stressing you the most?
I've got sort of in every area, maybe apart from romantically, I'm stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And but I know that I want to go forward, and I want to be kind of excited and connected and to do the next thing. So I then think, what can I do? What of all the things that I've learned to do that make me feel sort of centered and grounded? And I have actually learned to do loads of things. So at the moment, I'm obsessed with that.
Doing things that make you feel centered and grounded?
Yeah,
Or
and then if I can get back to that space, then I feel I can do anything. I have huge drive. But I've started to notice that drive isn't everything, because you can drive and then suddenly
not
you've
get
got
anywhere.
nothing. It's empty. And so there are all sorts of different things. But even knowing that, instead of I must climb to Mount Olympus and when I get there I'll feel better, which is actually it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the answer. So this is a kind of new phase of, using willpower in a slightly different way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
drive without fulfillment is interesting. Because
yeah,
we can be automatically driven because it's in our nature to be driven.
yeah,
But it's like it's like you're really hungry and you don't get to have a fulfilling meal. And you need to eat well at the end of it for that drive to not feel empty. And then it's like if we don't get enough REM sleep, because I'm obsessed with sleep at the moment, right? So there's a guy called Matthew Walker, and he wrote this book called Why We Sleep, and he does a 5-part podcast with Andrew Huberman, who does the Huberman Lab. It's a science podcast. But in it, I'm learning the difference, and I've started wearing this ring.
oh yeah. I hate those rings.
I know, I'm actually fucking loving it. But what it's interesting to do is, when we wake up and we feel anxious and worrying, and sometimes we worry and then we remember less things and we think, God, I didn't remember that, and there is a little bit of that, which is about the stress and where stress sits inside your brain and your short-term versus long-term memories. There's a bit of that. But then if you don't have enough REM sleep, then it's like your brain processor. So at the end of the evening, your brain will decide, what shall I remember and what can I discard? So if you don't back up the hard disk drive, the next day you will compound that feeling of stress.
I know that makes complete sense, but I also find if I disregard that entirely, I've slept badly and I think I've slept badly, but I don't necessarily have to be tired.
Yeah.
Or I can have some of the day where I've got that fake energy. So that's the bit that I'm going to riff off.
Yeah.
And then I'm a bit more sort of compassionate to self about being slightly gargle the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And I try out all various tricks. Like I have this analyst who I've seen for about 14 years, and sometimes he says, why don't you try not being tired? And I thought, okay, I'll try. Why not?
Yeah.
Instead of, I can't, because I spent a lot of time being tired and everything. And I'm trying out all these, it's a bit like sort of ice skating, going all over the place. And so that's why I don't like, I know I obviously haven't got the ring that my friends have got too, but I don't want to get too preoccupied.
I think I'm not preoccupied with it. The difference for me is it will make me remember, if I go to sleep an hour earlier and I don't stay up scrolling or whatever I do, I'll feel better the next day. So it prepares me to try it differently the next night. So I find it's more that I will feel propelled to know what to do the next night. But also, I do believe 100% in what you're saying when your therapist says, just say to yourself, I'm not tired, because I can get up, feel exhausted, but think, I know I can take an NM, I'm going to go to the loo, I'll have a cold shower and I'll feel fine. And I think that psychological training of your brain to say, switch that mindset, reset, it's incredibly powerful. 2 weeks ago, I met Deepak Chopra, all right, and I listened to him about 25 years ago at the Royal Geographical Society, and he said this story, which always stayed with me. And when I met him for the first time ever at this conference, and I said, I remember you telling the story, and he'd remember this story. that 5 or 6 men get down a mine in South Africa and they're stuck. And they're in this mine and only one of them is wearing a watch. And that person decides that when an hour has passed, he will only tell them half an hour has passed. So in the 10 days they were down there, the other 5 thought they'd been down there 5 days. And he was the only one who died because he knew, and his body knew how long they'd been there. But the others had a reset from this guy. God. And it just always stuck with me, the ability for our brain to tell our body something different, which is what you're saying or what your therapist is saying.
It's like some sort of optimism within that, isn't it?
Yeah.
On another note, can I ask you,
Yes.
if you fancy someone and you don't like what they're wearing, does it kill your attraction? Or how do you handle it?
I generally fancy people's brains. So it sort of doesn't matter. It's like, do they have a sexy brain? And I've been out with so many mixtures of people, some who have an unbelievable sense of humour but weren't classically good looking, an Italian or two who maybe was classically good looking but other bits, they were going to dress well too but didn't have substance. You've been down that road too, I think, Bella. But it is that brain thing. And so I'll notice what they wear, but I won't judge them for what they wear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was with somebody who wore the same thing every day for 10 years.
But I think that's fine. It's more confronting when it's sort of fancy stuff or like a fashion-y look, and then it's so embarrassing. And
It depends what turns you on.
yeah, it's
What
true.
turns you on?
I suppose,
Aesthetics turn you on a little bit.
well, it depends. I mean, I think most people are sort of brain lovers and sapiosexual, I think they call it. And it's so exciting that sometimes people can be just revoltingly dressed, and then because they're clever and funny, it's like an asset being so badly dressed.
It is. So I think I don't know how relevant it is. If somebody's too well dressed, that makes me suspicious. If everything's just so perfect, I'm like, there's not going to be much substance here.
Substance, or do you think there'll be over-critical or kind of exactingness about their outfit that might spill out over onto your outfit? That's what I'd be worried about.
No, I'd just be more... I suppose I'm not then allowing a man to have the same obsessive way that I might put an outfit together. Maybe that's where I'm separating out what I give myself permission to do, but I find challenging for somebody else if they're just everything's so perfect. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
And how do you feel about being naked? Can you be naked, or do you have to wear something that makes you feel safe,
That's
as
an
it
interesting
were,
question.
naked because you've still got something on?
Yeah. I had an episode when I was much younger that made me nervous to be naked. And so it was actually a school moment, not a kind of pervy one, but one where it did have an impact. And it was one where I was really quite young, probably 7. And we were at it was at a boarding school, and it was the summer, it was really hot, and we had a water fight, and we were all naked, young girls naked. And the woman below us at the school was called Miss Dunk, never forget her name. And she came upstairs and she said, you have to all go and stand by the gong. And the gong was at the bottom of the staircase. And we started to get dressed. She said, no, as you are. So we all stood naked. It was about sort of 6 a.m. until 8 a.m. when everyone had come down for breakfast, 300 girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So I do think I can actually pinpoint, I wouldn't think anyone would have to do therapy on this, that it made me very uncomfortable to be looked at naked. And it continued for years and years and years until I was married for many years to my partner, and then uncomfortable a little bit again. No, then probably until I was married to Johnny. Yeah, until I was married to Johnny. And he made me very, very comfortable in my own skin, and he loved me so much. So I felt, the freedom to then be comfortable with each aspect of myself. Yeah.
Gosh, that's really quite something.
Yeah.
That's like a terrifying French film being lined up.
It seemed
I mean,
then always when you put things into decades, because it was probably still, maybe it was 1971. You know, this is like how many years ago? So many years ago. This is 53 years ago. I mean, sounds like wow when I say 53 years ago, but it's a different life, a different time, a different way to punish children.
yeah,
You know,
it's very, very humiliating and shaming. And
yeah.
in fact, I was going to ask you if you remember feeling shame about anything you wore.
Oh, that's a good one. Shame, no. Because shame is about, there's guilt and shame. And just I remember learning, you know, we both learned the difference between those two. Shame? Shame is a very specific word to use around clothing,
Yeah,
you know? So I don't know. I'm going to ask you that question.
I think part of why I'm so interested in clothes is maybe as a sort of protecting device from shame. And I think it was to do with when we were growing up, and we grew up with no money. My mother had no money. My father didn't give her anything much. And so, and she was a hippie, and we didn't have many clothes. And then she was wearing a velvet caftan in the 60s. And so people focused on us, but in a very negative way. And so clothes I wanted to wear, I just wanted to be like a boy, really. And that was part of my shield. And I remember when I was 8 and we'd come back from living in Marrakesh, and it was very hand to mouth, and I was living with a friend of both my parents, even though they weren't together, and we were traveling around Gloucestershire, I think, in gypsy caravans, and they were upper class hippies. And I remember going to the post office, and the people in the post office said, "Oh, she's one of those hippies." And I thought I was like a gypsy, like a cool person. And I was so mortified. And I remember what I was wearing. I was wearing navy blue jumper, like scruffy, some old cords. And I had a kerchief around my throat to try and be as much like sort of Heathcliff or someone. You know, I'm not part of anything. I wanted to be with them.
Yeah.
And I felt so outside. And so when I'm getting dressed, I start with this feeling of like, how can I unify my thoughts and my best look? And I usually start with if I'm wearing I usually start with a sock. For some reason, socks make me feel really good.
My daughter feels identical about socks. I think it's interesting though, because for you, it's that jumper for you is the naked at the end of the stairs for me, that it is the basis for how you think about certain things, and it's been systemically stamped on, you know. So there's that feeling
Also,
you get from it.
at my school, I went to a Steiner school, and the teachers all wore Birkenstocks,
Yeah.
and I thought they were the most repulsive things, and I hated them, and I still don't wear them. I've got some that look a bit more trendy, like platforms, but I started to realize that clothes could give you power. They could set you apart from being sort of blanded out from these awful, dull, dreary teachers telling you everything you couldn't do. No one bothered to say what you could. But so if somebody appreciated clothes, it was so much more than that, really. It was like a vote of you. I know you've talked openly. I mean, on I've looked at some of your interviews where you've talked openly about addiction in your past, and you've been sober for decades, and addiction is all so associated with self-doubt. Yet I've known you actually since the 80s. I think I met you briefly then. I've known you slightly for a long time, and you seem so confident and And now more than ever, you seem kind of liberated and so cool, and it's such a joy to watch you just doing these things. And when you describe, all those letters that you had to write and people not taking you up, and then someone did, but it's really you. And how do you get this? I mean, it is quite remarkable. You are a phenomenon.
I didn't feel it though. Like in the 80s when you would have known me and I was copiously using drugs, like, a few
everybody.
of us. And I remember my sense of self versus people's perception of me was very different. And I remember feeling less than and different, and not different in a good way of celebrating myself because I didn't quite know myself, but in a way of feeling I'm a fraud. I had that feeling so much, a feeling I'm a fraud. And never looking at, did other people feel the same? Because we didn't think that at the time, we only thought about ourselves. So...
But what do you think kept you going forward? Because I remember meeting you and you saying that you had an accessories business with hair accessories. Yeah. And at the time I was working for Vivienne Westwood, and I thought, how does she know that she can influence people to buy these things? I was really struck because I was working for Vivienne, who was sort of super cool, but I definitely didn't have the confidence to delineate that somebody should buy something that I'd made, not till many years later. Yeah. And where did that come from?
I think it came from feeling different from the people I went to school with. So at boarding school, from like 11 to 16, I was the one living abroad and everyone else lived in England. And I would sort of bring things from abroad. So I liked to be the purveyor of having something different. And that gave me my self-worth. So if I could, there was no Benetton in London, and I sort of brought Benetton bright colour, things like that. And people were like, oh, and I just thought this gave me I was terrible at school. I was never good at games. I was quite good at theatricals and always played the male leads in Shakespeare plays, but that was the only thing I was good at. And also I left my boarding school at 16 because I'd been at boarding school for 6.5. I was so fucking fed up with boarding school. And then I went to Queensgate in London and my parents were still in Germany. And that's when I started to, and all the girls who were at Queensgate, a lot of them were English, and they all, then 17, 18, they were sort of being a debutante and we were sort of doing all this stuff together, but I never felt a part of any of these people. But I know some of them thought I was cool, but I didn't. I just felt I wasn't part of them. But I did have a sense, probably I was more curated in my fashion. So I would go to Annabelle's and wear my dad's Turnbull and Asser pajamas with his covert coat. So I would just wear these things because I didn't have the pretty dress from that shop that used to be antiquarious that everyone went to. Fielding, something, David Fielding, or these kind of debutante, or the ones with all the frill from Beecham Place, that woman,
Belleville Sassoon.
Belleville Sassoon. And they would all have these very sort of pretty dresses that their mothers, when they were Debs, would have gone to, it was that kind of historical repetition of dressing. And I didn't have that reference. My mother was not the peacock in our family, my father was, interestingly.
Oh, interesting.
And so he had far more beautiful clothes than my mother. My mother had lovely clothes, but she didn't care about clothes at all. She was Scottish and didn't care so much about fashion. My father would buy her clothes for her. And then when he stopped doing that, she just bought okay, boring, sweet things, but nothing like, grabby. But my dad would, always brush his suits at night and polish his shoes. And he had this real sense of colour and proportion and everything. So that's probably why I borrowed his clothes and not my mother's.
That's so good.
So that was very different. They were all in Belleville Sassoon. I was in my dad's pajamas. And so if I look back now, I could say actually then I was being different and doing these different. So with this hair bow thing, I just thought, everyone wanted these hair bows and they were boring. So I thought I'd go to Portobello Market and Bermondsey Market and I'll get these little beautiful Diamante brooches, which you got for £1. They'd be like £35 today. And I did it with a very creative girl, Katie Brain.
Oh, yes.
And so she ended up going to art school and being a potter. But at the time, between the two of us, we just did these. And then I went to Scott Kroller, and he's sold them for me.
Wow.
Because I'd done some fashion show for Ruth DeCann and Thomas Darjeski and all these people, and they were doing things, and Tracy Boyd, do you remember that sort of group? And
Yeah.
I met Scott, because I think he was going out with Ruth. And so I got in there, and then I just walked into Harvey Nichols and just said, come on, take these. And Princess Diana was really like trending then. And she was just doing, I don't know how she could have done these hair bows, because she had short bloody hair all her life, but somehow she instigated this.
Wow.
And so then I did, but I was a great starter and not a finisher, Bella. So I would start it, and then Katie wanted to go to art school. I left Queensgate, and it sort of petered out.
Well, now you founded Trinny London. And I mean, it's notorious, it's unheard of to break in, a single person to break into this world of behemoths. And it's incredibly successful. And, you know, everyone is obsessed with it and obsessed with you as well. When you do these things on Instagram and on YouTube, and there's just so much charm and so much enthusiasm, and you seem, I don't know, it's like you've done all these things in your life. You're such an achiever, even though you may not feel like it, but you seem like you've just found your way. You seem like you're just getting in your stride, and it's thrilling. It's so kind of inspiring, and it's so much fun. And I wondered how do you know, you've got this huge thing that you've built in a really short time, and you're making these discoveries, and how do you kind of keep that going? You know, what do you bring to yourself? So you're the one, you're the kind of
Because I'm never
maker of all
done.
this.
I think you keep going because you're never done. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you never, like when you say what you just said, I'm lying here, think, please can she stop giving compliments, because it's beginning to, I'm finding it tricky. I find it very uncomfortable, actually, if I'm really candid with you. I just find it's very nice, but it's like, can we just get rid of that and then just get to the question so I can answer the question? That's how I fucking feel. But I think you never feel, I've succeeded, let me sit back and let's look at what's happened. All I look at is what I haven't done yet, and what we haven't done yet as a business, and not in a way of punishing myself, but just, I never look back and go, oh, look at all that. I look forward and think, I want to do that. And then I do question sometimes if there's never this sense. I think when you choose to be a full entrepreneur, you're never going to feel fully fulfilled. That's a part of the journey of an entrepreneur, is you're never going to be I don't think you go into being an entrepreneur for that, oh, one day I'll wake up and feel fulfilled moment. But you will be permanently pursuing your dream. And that in itself, that journey, is what is exciting. So that's just how I see it.
Well, thank you so much, Trinny, for being on the couch and for being in Fashion Neurosis. It's been wonderful.
I've loved it. It's been incredibly relaxing and a great way to finish a day. Thank you.
Thank you.